One will be doing the talking, I assume, and the other one will ensure that you're still awake after that lunch time. Oh, lightning calls are rookies. Oh, right, yes, of course. After the rookie's end, there is slots for lightning talks. So if you fancy just getting up and doing an impromptu talk about anything, say threat intelligence maybe, sir, then you can go down to registration, put your name down, and you can go and give a lightning talk on any topic you want. It doesn't even need to be strictly security related. That's the beauty of BSides. So, without further ado, and before your lunch comas fully kick in, I will hand you over to Turner and Hardy.
Thanks, Gavin. Can everyone hear me?
They've only given us one mic.
I'm just going to make do with it. So thanks for coming to see our talk. Presented by me and Dave. Everything in the talk is basic stuff that we developed, as we'll show you as we go through. And we're going to be talking about PowerShell Food with Metasploit. So who are we? So that's Dave, that's me, that's my Twitter handle, that's Dave's Twitter handle. We've worked together for...
Sorry. Lock the doors.
Yeah, there's always one though, isn't there?
There was 4 of us, 2. Take that man's name down.
So me and Dave worked together for quite a few years now, so we know each other fairly well. We're both hackers, pen testers, whatever you will. Dave's a bit more senior than I am. I like to refer to him as Grandad Dave, and he always refers to me as a young'un, some northern humour apparently. And we both work for NetShoes. So what's Metasploit? Hopefully I don't have to explain that to anyone in here. It's a de facto pen testing framework, originally written by H.D. Moore, and now been taken over by Rapid7. So I won't dwell on that. So what's PowerShell?
Oh no, it's you. Sorry, no, go on, it's you.
He's coming, didn't he? So yeah, what's PowerShell? So command prompt on steroids, essentially. It was introduced in 2009. PowerShell version 1 was introduced in Vista. One of the beauties of PowerShell is that it's an object-oriented language, so you can basically incorporate any of the .NET objects and use it basically as you will on the command line. It uses parameters, so it's all variable-based, so everything's kept within memory. So if you write something to a variable, it gets reused. You can use it in code, and you can background jobs. It's extendable. You can have command lines and plugins. But why, as pen testers, do we need PowerShell?
It's my one now. Yeah, I don't know whether anybody keeps sort of a finger on the pulse with Windows, Microsoft these days, but starting with like Server 2012, they introduced what was called a core installation, where there was no GUI, and pretty much the only way to interact with the operating system, apart from the remote access tools like SAT and whatever, was PowerShell. So they started to put their eggs in one basket way back in 2012 with Server 2012. But now with Server 2016 coming along, basically the default build of the server is going to be no GUI. There's going to be only PowerShell, but there is the option to add it back in. But girls use GUIs anyway, so. And then Windows and Microsoft are already banging on about this new thing called Nano Server, which is like a just enough operating system setup for, I don't know, I think they're mainly pitching it at the web, but also in the data center in the cloud. And this is only managed at the moment with PowerShell and the DSC, which is their like Puppet type chef type implementation, which allows configuration from an offline source. And they're pumping so much into these new operating systems and the way they're actually managed. They've brought a new level of PowerShell out, PowerShell 5. I don't know if anybody's played around with the new PowerShell 5 with Windows 10. A lot of the functionality in Windows 10 is also based on PowerShell. So PowerShell is now like Microsoft's like Bash almost for Linux. It's the core of the operating system. Previously, like Windows was a GUI with some tools in the background. Now it's PowerShell with some tools, APIs and everything else through PowerShell. So they kind of put all their eggs in one basket and moving towards why PowerShell is important.
So why should we as pen testers use PowerShell? So I don't know if you know, but here's just a quick summary of a few tools that are pretty much awesome to use in PowerShell. So the invoke command that basically you can download and run on the command. Stuff like get GP password, mimikatz. The ones highlighted in bold we're going to talk about, so I won't really dwell on them. But basically the whole framework of tools just out there, written in PowerShell scripts, you can just import to a host and run them.
Probably could add one on the end of there, couldn't we? The new Empire by the PowerShell guys, PowerTools guys. That's
yeah,
just been released.
It's probably no longer the PowerSploit thing, but yeah. So what do we have before in Metasploit? So when you get a session on Metasploit, how could you use PowerShell on a remote host? So the answer is you couldn't really. There was a couple of scripts in there that allow you to execute one-liners or one script and receive the output. It was slow, it wasn't quite intuitive, and nothing was preserved within scripts. So if you wanted to import a module and run multiple functions within that module, you just couldn't do it. You have to run one module at a time and rerun it. So this just to give you a bit of a background. So everything that we've done, we've tested on this sort of scenario. So it's quite a corporate environment. Everything's gone through firewalls. Everything's got AV on it. Everything goes through a proxy with user-based authentication. So it really simulates a real-world attack. So we just wanted to show you that, just to give you a bit of a concept. So the old way. So this is the way you used to currently have to run it if you wanted to run, basically, PowerShell on any host. So I'm assuming you all know how to get PowerShell interpreter sessions. So we're going to basically go from there on. So as you can see, I've got 2 interpreter sessions, some with UAC on, some without. These are all, again, behind the domain. This is me running a single script on the host. You even have to append each script with a function that you want to call. And then it goes and uploads it by 8K bytes, because there's a limit on the command prompt. And then it comes back and it dumps it all into a script. And then you have, well, sorry, a text file, sorry, not script. And then you can output it. So that's just an example of how you used to be able to run it. And although it looked that easy, that hard, it's just not very intuitive, and that's not really how PowerShell works. PowerShell is a view of retaining scripts, retaining stuff between running different functions.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this retaining variables inside of the PowerShell function is one of the big things that people probably don't know about. Is when you type PowerShell.exe and you run some stuff and collect some information and create some variables, and then close that and then reopen it again, they don't exist anymore, they've gone. And that's where Ben's saying about the fact that you need to preserve, as a pen tester, we probably want to preserve variables or preserve arrays or whatever, text files or whatever, that were generated inside the session.
Yeah, so, sorry, just go on there just while this video runs. So this is PowerView, which is a bit of a larger script. Initially we ran get GP password, which is a fairly small script. So as you can see, it takes a shitload longer, basically. And there's a lot more scripts and commandments that you want to use in PowerView, functions rather. So this is just getting the user accounts from the domain. But you might now want to go and run another function. So it just doesn't work how you want to be able to use it. You want to just run all the different functions all in one. Again, I won't bore you with all this, but this is another one, PowerUp, again, written by them same guys. You want to invoke all checks. You have to append the invoke all checks function to the script and then run it. As you can see, it takes ages. This is like a really big script. So we just wanted to kind of show you or give you a concept of what it was before we came up with what we came up with.
It's still going.
Yeah, so it still goes.
Can you imagine this over the internet? I just want to know if there's any vulnerable services. I'll go to bed and get over. I know what I there's a little dance while that's finished or something. Keep you interested? Stop your lunch.
Right, we'll just skip that anyway. So a bit about the background.
Yeah, this was born out of at Netitude. We have these things called clinic days where some of us decide to present little smaller versions of what we're doing now, and we had one on PowerShell and PowerSploit and that kind of thing. And we had some issues, to say the least. I think it was lack of knowledge or lack of, I don't know what it was lack of, but we didn't get it to quite work. And We had a need for getting these scripts, PowerSploit and all the PowerUp and Power Tools and this kind of thing, onto the victim box. And I kind of went away and I thought, well, how am I going to achieve this? Like, script it basically, so it's repeatable and it happens every time the same, and we've always got this tool set where we want it and we know how it works. So I came up with some PowerShell scripts again that used a tool that was probably released, what, about a year ago at DerbyCon 14, I think, called PowerCat, which is netcat written in PowerShell, effectively. And I kind of wrote these scripts that used a PowerCat session and imported scripts from the actual GitHub sites of PowerSploit and these other guys, and then actually pulled them into memory, which made things a whole lot simpler and a lot easier for us as pen testers to be able to say, right, oh, I just run Dave's scripts, boom, and all the tools are there. Which is fantastic because we never had that before. But then Ben said, well, why can't we do this with Metasploit? And that's where our real sort of trials and tribulations started with this whole thing. So, yeah, this is what's new.
So yeah, basically interactive PowerShell sessions in Metasploit. So it's not just a payload, it's actually a whole new session type. So we had to change the whole command prompt session type to create a new PowerShell session, so that you have to run now, you have to create post modules that go with it, not just any of the existing post modules work with it, has its own session type. And this is the kind of quick demo of what it gives you basically.
It's like an on-the-box experience, as I call it. So when you pop the PowerShell shell from Metasploit, it looks like PowerShell, apart from it's not blue and white, it's black and white. Well, it can be blue and white if you change the colour of your bash or your Metasploit, whatever you run it in. So as you see there, what comes up on the screen is what you get when you own PowerShell. And that's essentially what you're looking at there. And we'll show you a little bit more now.
Oh yeah, just wanted to add that this isn't a trivial task. I don't know if anyone has in here got anything into Metasploit, but it's an absolute bitch. The coding that you have to follow, all the processes and everything, it just takes forever. We've managed to get 6 pull requests actually fully approved. A few of the guys, I think one of the guys who's helped massively, Meatballs up there, and a few of the guys that I'm sure aren't here. 178 comments, one of the payloads went through just to get approved. So you can see the kind of ball ache that we went through just to get this into Metasploit.
Yeah, but we did it in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, so it wasn't a bad time.
We went at it.
And HC, talking to him, he's been helping a lot as well. So yeah, so PowerSploit plus Metasploit equals access granted.
So we've done everything in memory. There's no disk touching whatsoever, so it's completely OPSEC safe. So unless you decide to save a file to disk, but then, hey. But the rest of it is completely invisible to antivirus. Anything you do in there is completely safe. You will not get a problem.
Yeah, if you chuck stuff like invoke mimikatz directly onto a host at the moment, it'll just, even McAfee, and that's not the best in the world, but that'll go, no, get rid of it. Anything that we import, yeah, Windows Defender, none of that will touch this.
Oh, there is a way to stop Windows Defender detecting mimikatz, but that's for another time. It's easy.
So this is the new way. So again, we'll start with the same process. We'll have a couple of sessions running through a firewall, just retaining the session.
Just while this is running, there are multiple ways to deploy these payloads, because they are payloads, so it's not an exploit. I do it a different way. Ben does it with PSexec, and I do it with maybe like a web browser and get the thing to pull it in that way up. But there's multiple ways to achieve the end result.
So we've phoned this client basically through a firewall. We can't get to him directly, and we want to now, so we've got an interpret session, we want to upgrade that session to a PowerShell so we can do all our fun stuff. So one way to do it is the payload inject option. So that basically injects whatever payload you give it into memory directly, and that's just one way that we're doing it. So I'm running a bind shell now against the host using port forwarding within Metasploit. So just because I can't access the host, we've added a route. And this is the load module function. So the load module bit, basically, this goes and grabs loads of scripts off the internet, all the commandlets that you want to run, and it loads them directly into memory using the system.net.web client within PowerShell. So that's kind of how you weaponize the shell, shall we say. So you don't just get a normal PowerShell session that's interactive. That's the first really cool stuff bit. The second bit is that it goes and downloads all these basically directly from GitHub, so you've got the latest and greatest versions. They're all in memory, doesn't touch disk, and you can just start racking off your PowerView commands, invoke net user, all that sort of great stuff that you want to use.
You can also set the URL it pulls those from a local web server. So if you're on an internal network where you've no internet access, run up a web server on your pen test box with those tools in the right format and boom.
So there we go, we've got an interactive PowerShell session, like command prompt, but it's purely PowerShell, everything's retained, all the session variables, everything is purely in there, and all the functions that we've loaded, well now you can just run straight off the bat. So who am I obviously isn't a PowerShell function, but this is a PowerShell command that we uploaded, so get TPP password. So literally you can just run it, it knows about them all, you can just run it like that on the command line and get it back instantly. There's no waiting around, there's no copying it off. You can background the session like you can any other session in Metasploit. You can write post modules to interact with it. Again, we'll go on to that in a minute. Just showing you how easy it is basically. There's none of this waiting around for hours. See how quickly that loaded. Yeah.
It's loaded in memory, isn't it? It's just not. It's like being sat at the Windows box with PowerShell open. There's no tab complete though, but you can't have it with it. Maybe when it might, I don't know, somebody was talking about making it happen in interpreter, but we don't know about that.
But again, yeah, so just running, basically doing priv-s checks. We're not here to sort of talk about all the PowerShell scripts that are out there. There are loads of cool ones. We're just showing you how you can use them easily via a Metasploit session. Something that I've been quite interested with while running this was more about how I can run stuff in the background. So when you get one session, if you run something on the command line like you do normally, it sort of uses up that session. And a lot of these stuff like inv, so I don't know if you've heard about Responder. Basically, it's a NetBIOS spoofing tool that allows you to get a load of hashes off a network. And when you're often sort of, again, through a firewall, you're not on the host, you want to run stuff like that. But also you want to run it in the background, because you don't want to see everything as it comes back, so you want to leave it running for 2 hours, come back and get your hashes. But also you might be wanting to run other commands. So there's this basically get jobs. It's PS jobs within PowerShell. It's a great little function. Basically it just runs like screen on Linux, so you can just basically start a new session, give it a commandlet, and it'll just run, and it'll just sit there running, and you can go and get the output periodically. So we found this works really well. So example, if you're using inv, which is, as I said, very similar to Responder, you can just leave it running.
Something I just mentioned about start jobs is, and I'll mention something else because I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. Start jobs actually starts a new PowerShell process. So if you look in Task Manager, you'll have 2 PowerShell.exes running, or multiples. And if you start running too many jobs, the victim box might get a bit stressed or a bit slow, or something might, well, one of the scripts might take all the resources, or something might go in a loop and basically break the box. So you need to be careful how many you do at once.
Just beware, and it depends how stealthy you want to be as well, because obviously if someone is quite savvy, checks the processes and you have 10 PS jobs running, it'll look a bit dodgy.
I'll show you a way to get around that later.
So again, so this is me just, I was going to show a demo, we've got loads of demos, so I just thought I'd print screen it. So again, you've got the session, and basically you've uploaded inv, so this is not doing it in memory, by the way. So you upload inv to the host, start job, script block, and then give it the PS1 file, and basically it just sits there running, as you can see. There.
We have modified inv to run as a function, so you can actually import it into a PowerShell Metasploit shell that we've developed. It does work that way also.
Yeah, because some people write scripts that as soon as you load them it runs, where that isn't how you want it if you use this, because obviously if you import it and it starts running, that's going to screw your shell up. So you want it the way they write it in functions, like most of them in PowerSploit, so like invoke mimikatz, you load it into memory, and then when you want to run it, you run the function invoke all checks, or invoke mimikatz, or whatever. So inv wasn't written quite like that, so Dave just changed it, and basically it works like that now. So
I've got a version that's OPSEC as well. It doesn't save anything to disk, because it saves to a file, the actual hashes that you get as well. Limitations in the fact that it spits it out into the session, you've got to copy paste it, but if you want to be.
Can you save them for like an SCP session? Like, so you can instead of dropping them through the specific function, you SCP them out?
I suppose you could do that.
if you've got SCP,
Yeah, if you've got.
I know PowerShell is starting to support SSH. I don't know.
I don't know when it will come.
It says it's coming, but at the moment you'd have to have it yet. But yeah, essentially.
But there's the pipeline with PowerShell as well, as they call it. You know, like you pipe things in Bash. It's the same kind of thing, but some commandlets don't like pipeline, but you can pipe stuff out to another place. One of the things I like to do to get past antivirus when I can't actually drop stuff on a box or get it to open is use new PS drive, which is like mapping a drive, but you map it through PowerShell. And this, like if you stand an SMB server up on your pen test box and you're on the same network or you can reach it, you can use new PS drive, map a drive with which's got a share full of PowerShell tools or whatever you want. And antivirus doesn't see inside it, so you can basically get access to all the evil tools and antivirus sees nothing. So that's probably a way around it as well if I do it that way.
Yeah, sorry, so going back to the get job. So again, I'll just run that job. To get the job, you can just see them listed there. If you run 3 or 4, it'll all be listed there. To receive the output from that job, you just type receive job and then the ID of the job. So again, so that's me running NetBias spoofing on the network. It's coming back saying NetBias spoofing is disabled or whatever for them hosts. But leave it running long enough and you'll go and get a hash. So again, I'm not here to talk about what the script does, but the functionality, you can use it within hours. You can run it as a job separately, leave it there running, wait for it to get a couple of hashes, take it back, and it doesn't interact or doesn't mess up your session, essentially. So a bit about the code. So it seems like it's a lot, but actually, because of the way PowerShell is written, it's really not. You can use all the .NET objects for creating sort of TCP clients and SSL streams. Basically, there's 2 pages of code here. I won't bore you and go through it all. But essentially, the top bit, if you're in a proxy-aware environment, when you go to download the modules, you want to make sure you're using the credentials of that logged-in user, and you don't have to supply them because you might not even know them at that point. So that's basically the first function at the top. PowerFun. I'm pretty shit with names, and I don't know why I called it PowerFun, but it's kind of stuck now, and it's, so you can all diss me about that, but I am really shit.
I love it. I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
It's one of those
Not very imaginative.
One of those moments in life.
PowerFun.
But it is.
So when we first created this, it wasn't quite as well, it didn't have bind, didn't have reverse, wasn't SSL aware. But when we put it into Metasploit, HC went, oh, it's really good, but it's all in clear text HTTP, I don't like that. Okay, well, we'll implement SSL. Okay, no problem. And you've only done it as a bind, I want reverse. So like, okay, we'll go and implement that. So this is kind of how it's spawned into this. So this is basically, you can use it as a bind shell or reverse. One thing we want to do in the future is a reverse HCP, which again I'll come on to in a bit. But that's the first 37 lines of code. As you can see, it's not very clever, really.
It's clever. Go and listen to it. It's proper awesome.
But I'm not a coder. He's not a coder.
No.
We just sort of put this together. Okay, yeah. So the download, that's the download cradle. So that basically takes proxy credentials and goes and downloads the modules that you supplied from Metasploit. And then basically the while loop is the main bit, so it sits there, it sends a command, and it basically outputs it back to you in the stream, and then waits for another command. So that's essentially the while loop there that does everything. One thing we did notice is the size of the limit. As you can see, bytes at the top, 20,000 kbytes now. We started at like something like 255, and we found loads of errors just because when we were trying to upload a module, which again we'll come on to in a bit, it's an absolute nightmare because it was uploading in 254 bytes at a time, and that just took an absolute age and kept dying. So we had to increase that. Well,
I had more air when I started trying to develop that script. Actually, it was I know what was great. Until we worked that out.
He was.
Well, it wasn't me who worked it out. I went, Ben, I'm struggling with this, and he looked at it for like 3 minutes and went, it's this. And I went, you what? Yeah, it's this. And then it worked. Light bulb moment.
But essentially, everything you type in is piping it to invoke expression in PowerShell, and it's piping it to outstream to get the response back in basically ASCII text. So I suppose there are some limitations about how much you can type in one line, things like that. But we haven't really found many limitations at all with it. And if you do, you can just upload a whole script as a function and then do it that way.
So we've done some extra stuff as well. This Topline 64-bit PowerShell sessions, that was another one of these, why the hell is this thing not working for several, I don't know, Well, I used to be able to get it to work every time, and he had loads of trouble, and I'm like, what's going on, what's going on? And then we actually worked out what it was. Because of the way Metasploit actually deploys, it's a payload at the end of the day. The way it works is it uses the command function, and it actually deploys it using a 32-bit piece of code. So it was deploying our 64-bit PowerShell session into a 32-bit process, so it just didn't work. So once we worked out that, another light bulb moment, we developed the 64-bit session, which gave us complete functionality.
One thing I'll add there is, ordinarily that wouldn't matter. However, when you want to get passwords out of LSAT, which is running as a 64-bit process, you're kind of screwed if you're on a 32-bit process, because you just can't see it. So that was what, like, everything else works, except when you want to inject into a 64-bit process. When he was running a 32-bit Windows machine, he was like, oh, it works for me, it's great. And I was like,
Mimikatz every time.
Yeah, Mimikatz work. And I was like, oh shit. So this was actually quite a big change that just kind of happened. HTML helped us out again with it when we tried to get it through Metasploit. But although it doesn't look like it's a big thing, it just took us a little while to get it through.
It's just that wall you stare at for hours and hours and just don't see anything past it. It's one of those moments. But like you said earlier, we're not coders, but we've made this happen purely because we needed it to happen, I think, really. Like Benja mentioned, we've done SSL support, so it's completely encoded, encrypted, sorry. With SHTTP, you've worked on that. That's coming still, isn't it?
So at the moment, if you initially deploy this without using an interpreter session and you do reverse TCP, that's not proxy aware, so it won't automatically get you a shell if you're in a proxy aware environment. If the egress is shite and they allow 443 out without going through a proxy, you're happy. But if not, you can't at the moment. So we're working on that. I can get it working, just not in Metasploit at the moment. But that's definitely coming.
The load script is the thing that caused me to lose hair and be grey hair. That's more of a, so you're in, you've got a session, you've got a script that you want to load locally. So maybe the host doesn't have any ports open that are useful, so you can't use a local web server, there's no internet access. The load script is like a post module almost, in a way that you use the script to load your PowerSploit, your Power Tools, all the other things through the Metasploit channel into the actual victim, the PowerShell shell that you're running on the victim. We're still trying to get that into Metasploit. For some reason it's taken a long time.
Yeah.
And we don't really
we
know
had some
why.
progress last weekend. Sort of CCHD in, and he's working on it.
But I think that will be, once that's there, that's a big pile of functionality that allows you to do a lot more in a very locked down environment.
Yeah, you can literally load it from either a file on your host or give it a folder. So if you, like, I have a pen test folder, back in the Backtrack days, with all my PowerShell scripts in. Once you've got a session that's PowerShell, you can say, right, go load all them scripts in that folder, and it'll just do that. It'll just go, and then we've got a massive weaponized session. So it doesn't go off to the GitHub and get the sessions like the other way did. So there's just two ways of doing it, basically. So we wanted multiple ways, didn't we?
Well, that just stops every issue with like egress or anything like that, because you're actually being able to connect through the Metasploit channel to the actual session. And we've done a few simple post modules, but they are simple, aren't they, really? But then Ben's going to talk about how simple it is to write a post module realistically.
It's whether you need post modules, but I guess we didn't really know how Metasploit wanted to go with this, so we didn't know whether they wanted us to rewrite a load of post modules that already exist. So for example, I was messing with listing all the services and service binaries on a host. In Windows it's quite difficult, because you've got to use SC to get the name, and then you've got to look in the registry to get the actual image path when you're doing basic privs checks and things like that. Whereas in PowerShell it's literally like one line of code and it brings you all that data back. So it's like, well actually, yeah, we could do with it running post modules that already exist, but for the PowerShell session. But we just, again, that's like an iterative process, because none of them at the moment support PowerShell, but we can go through, and any ones that we think we can migrate over, we can just go ahead and do that. Or anyone, not just us, obviously. And finally, there was the rewriting of mixing modules. HD said to me one day, basically I'm not very object-oriented. I like to go top-down with my coding. So every module I created, every payload I created, 6432, it was like literally copy-paste. And HD said, oh, why don't you use mixing modules? And I was like, yeah, okay. And basically it's just object-oriented. So basically there's one superclass, and you call everything from that rather than writing code 10 times. Makes sense if you're a coder, but I will, or not.
Get in the hour.
So I'm just going to demo the 64-bit basically with the Mimikatz and the load script module. So you'll know how this differs. Well, I'll talk about it. We have to talk about it a bit. Pretty similar again. This way so I'm doing it a different way this time. So I'm using PSexec. So this is like when you're doing a normal internal pen test. You've got admin creds somehow, and you basically want to get a PowerShell session instead of a interpreter session. So you can go straight in and go, right, I want a PowerShell, find TCP, 64-bit, straight off the bat. So as you would, give the R host, give it the payload, give it the port.
So it's all of the modules, all of them.
My secure passwords.
It's better than some I've seen.
Yeah, it's password complexity in Windows, actually.
Absolutely.
I'm worried about it not working, but I know it works. The video rather than audio.
We had such a discussion. No, we need to do it live, then they'll believe us more. It's like, yeah, but what when it goes wrong? But actually, it didn't go wrong, did it?
So as you can see, it just opens up pretty quick, nothing to it. We haven't loaded any, so it's not weaponise at the moment, it's just purely PowerShell. You're in a system because you pay exec as admin, and it starts to service a system. The cool thing is now, so we're going to weaponise it with the other way. So this is a post module. Again, this isn't in Metasploit at the moment, but it's on Git.
If you use our version of Metasploit from Ben's Git, it's actually there.
But again,
that's
so
subject to change at any time.
So hopefully it'll be approved in the Git version very soon.
Yeah.
So you can give it a folder, you can give it a script, and then you give it a Metasploit session. PowerShell session. It's as easy as that, really. But we're going to show you how quick this is, as opposed to the very old school way of loading scripts as well. So basically it chunks it. We had to write a stager because of what I was saying before about the byte size limit was 254. We upped that to 2,000 bytes now. And now you can stage it in 2,000 byte jobs, so you can just trick a load of code. Basically, it converts a script into base64 and splits it into chunks. If you set this to verbose, which I didn't for the video, it shows you loading each chunk, and that's how it sends it to the client. Yeah, so loading 45 chunks, so that's quite a big one. I think that's probably invoke Mimikatz or something. But it's still fairly quick considering what size of script you're loading. So you can just leave that running, 20 scripts or whatever, all the PowerSploit stuff, all the PowerUp stuff. They. So as you can see, so basically it pipes into variables, so you do see that output, unfortunately. But they're all in there now, so you can just call them as per the function in the module. So invoke Mimikatz. It's on a 64-bit machine. You're in a system. You can now talk to LSAS, and then you can get the clear text passwords out of memory, which is happy days. So anyone who's logged on the box, you just get that password, providing you can talk to LSAS. And this is, again, none of this touches disk. So at this point, AV has got no chance at all. And even a forensic investigation would be pretty tough to find this information. Get a host ID, this is using the PowerView stuff. Again, I'm not going to show you all of them, but just show you a few of them working, just to prove that it does work and we're not just talking shit. That takes a little while.
Well, it's a wicked tool, that is proper good, that.
So yeah, when you're on a big domain, you want to know what's out there when net
That's your go-to,
but beware, it takes a little while to run. There's only 3 machines there, so
this is quite a big deal, isn't it? That a lot of people don't think about trusts and actually what you can do if you can access and get information on the trusts. And also now Mimikatz believe it can actually use those trusts, abuse those trusts to actually create tickets in parent domains of subdomain, of child domains, through the fact that actually the domains have to have a trust set between them. So yeah, that's quite a big thing nowadays. I think Mimikatz has not long since been updated to add that in.
and just to show you there, so what you might not realise is when you're running like PowerView, it gets an object back. So like I've piped that through for each. Basically, I just want to get the SAM account name, basically. No, it's finished. But yeah, so just be aware that when you're running these tools, some of the PowerShell stuff, it brings back an object, so you might have to then pipe the object to find out what bit in the object that you want. So if it's not working, it might be working, but it might be just giving you back loads of data. So just be aware of that when you're running stuff in PowerShell. It's been really good, essentially. It's bringing back an object. Yeah, so last one is basically the HTTP proxy. So like I was saying before, it's a reverse TCP if you're in a proxy-aware situation. Hold on, I'm just going to go back and talk about it. Yeah, so when you're in a proxy-aware situation and you want to send in a PowerShell payload via some document, PDF or whatever, and it wants to use the proxy that's built in, I've written it, so I've written a Ruby module that sort of does the back-end side of it, but it's not integrated into Metasploit yet. So as you can see, I've set up a Ruby HTTP server that handles the request this side, and I've sent the payload in, and you get a PowerShell session. And that's all basically over HTTP. So it's not just a TCP stream, it's all via, so you can see it all in the proxy logs and everything. But this isn't quite integrated into Metasploit. It's just as good of a shell, and we're getting that you can do the same sort of stuff with it. It's just we haven't quite well, had the time to get into Metasploit, but there's a lot of coding that needs to be changed to get that approved.
And we need to learn how to do that, I think.
Yeah. The documentation isn't the easiest to follow, but we'll get there. So, yeah.
Simple post module. And that's pretty much it. As you see there, most of it's Metasploit stuff at the beginning, just telling you who's written it, what it does, blah, 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 blah. And in the simplest way, it's using the, what is it, the bottom 3 lines there?
Yeah. And one of them just printing.
And one of them just prints it. And you're using the session shell command and the contents of the PS command variable to run a post module on the PowerShell session.
Yeah, so that's it's in its simplest form. If you want to go out there, write a module, and put it in your .msf4 folder and use it against our PowerShell sessions, that's all you have to do. Copy and paste that, put it in, and it'll work. So you can write like loads. Again, you don't need to, because you can write PowerShell scripts. But if you want it properly in Metasploit, you can go use post set session run. That's how you do it. Because all that brings back is all the services. But obviously, anything you can write in PowerShell, you can write in here. So it's just quite a cool way to completely integrate it. So it's a bit more like Empire. So Empire obviously uses the modules, and it doesn't allow you to run anything interactively. That's how you can do exactly the same thing with Metasploit, essentially. In that many lines of code, and most of that is just bog standard Metasploit stuff.
So this is something that I've been working on recently. As we said earlier, that the PowerFun.ps1, it's a PowerShell script. And Metasploit deploys PowerFun as a payload, and that's where the PowerFun.ps1 script lives. But if you take that code and modify it very slightly, you'll see it's a function, and you can actually incorporate that function into a script, and then the rest of it's up to you, really. It's just what you want to do with it. Click next now. So we talked about how compact it is. Well, that's how compact it is when you need to use it in a PowerShell script, 46 lines of code. And in this one, I don't know if you can see it at the top there. You might be able to see where it says change this at the top. So that's an IP address where you want the connection to come back to, or bind to, and then the port. And that will, when you run that and you've got a listener there, it'll come back and give you a PowerShell session. It's as simple as that. So, how can we use it? Well, in a phishing attack, for instance, so we all know about phishing, we know how straightforward it is. You create a convincing Word document, for instance, or an Excel sheet, or whatever. Embed a stager. I don't know if I want to do it with a macro or a batch file, or whatever way you decide to make this thing. So it pulls in the PowerFun script from your web server, or whether you decide to deploy it, and you get a reverse shell. And it's all in memory again, and you get no antivirus issue. And if you choose to use Metasploit as your listener, you get exactly what we've just shown you in the videos and we talked about earlier. Okay. So if you want to get a bit more clever and a bit more evil, as it says there, we're going to use PowerShell in its proper way that how PowerShell can work. So we're going to write a script and use functionality of PowerShell that, as it says there, interrogates the network and Active Directory. I'm assuming we're in an Active Directory situation here. Obviously, you do get standalone boxes, but I'm assuming that. So we're going to use PowerShell to get lots of information back about the network and Active Directory. This is all built in. We're going to ask the user to give me their credentials, and we're going to get the box to email it back to me. And then we're going to drop a shell in a new process using PowerFlow. All done natively, like it says there, all done with PowerShell. So if we take one example, one part of that, we've got, let's get some information from the network. So we're going to use, get a WMI object, which is Windows Management Interface, part of PowerShell. Let's query the network. Let's query the local computer with no information about that computer whatsoever, using standard variables that are available on the machine. $end, colon, blah, 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 are all built in. So let's get all that information about the machine we're actually attacking. Let's look at Active Directory. This is just an example. This is part of the fact that it needs to email the stuff back out to me. Let's query Active Directory, again with no knowledge of the domain or Active Directory we've dropped onto. We use PowerShell with commands like that, using System Directory Services, Active Directory. This is all .NET stuff built into PowerShell, all native. isnow searcher, which is another built-in searching functionality to search Active Directory. Again, here we're looking for an Exchange server. We find one at the bottom. It says find one at the bottom. You can modify that to find all if you would like to. It's okay. We store all that in variables. Okay, next. So the next part, we want the user's credentials. Now, there's a lovely part in PowerShell called get credential. It's a commandlet. So we create a function, get password, I call it. We ask it to pop a box that looks just like a Windows credential box, because it is a Windows credential box. We pre-populate the username with their domain and their username, and we ask them for their creds, which they type in gladly and click OK. Then we use the information we've collected from Exchange, blah, 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 and we use a lovely PowerShell commandlet called send mail message, which basically sends an email, populate it with the right variables, stick some stuff in the body from all the other bits we've collected, boom, sends me an email.
David's genuinely evil.
Why not use what you've got against it? And then this is another part. This is what Ben was talking about with jobs. I talked about the start job earlier. I've left two things in there. There's one called the job method, which Ben's talked about. Start jobs. If you run too many, you get too many instances. Blah 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 blah. The way I've used it here is I've created a script block, but it's actually not a separate file, like Ben's was dropped on the box. Mine's actually part of the script, so you create what's called a PowerShell script block, and the job is run from that function and blah blah blah, like through there, without being too technical. And then there's the other method, which is what's probably more up to date. It's called run spaces, which are a whole lot more controlled. You can apply what are called the throttles and stuff like that to stop the actual processes running away with themselves, and you can run multiples of these depending on the actual amount of memory and the processor and this kind of thing. You don't impact on the box whatsoever. So using either of these methods, whichever way you choose, we can drop PowerFun into a completely separate process and connect back to our command and control and just sit there happily even after the main script's finished. So if we drop it. So like I said, you ask for the creds. That's what the user sees on the screen. Like I've blurred my domain out, but that's my username there. And you type the password into the box. One lovely thing about PowerShell and Microsoft is they thought they'd be cute, because yeah, you type that in, but it's encrypted. Well, technically not. It is encrypted, but there's a property of the get credential command word that actually allows you to extract in clear text. Only if you do it while that PowerShell session's actually active. If you close that PowerShell session, the key is gone completely, you'll never decrypt it. So if you actually take that property and stick that in your email, you get their clear text credits. Excellent. And that's just done with that's a listener done with netcat or ncat, sorry, the one that comes with nmap. Obviously, like Ben said, it's SSL, and you get back exactly the same thing. just by running the PowerShell script.
So this is just how you can use it outside of Metasploit. It's not just in Metasploit. If you wanted to go and mess with it, you can. And so basically how Dave just taken it and messed with it and use it completely standalone. If you want to use it that way, it'd be more complex with it.
And then that's the next one, click it again, and that's just the email that my email account sent back to me with its information. And that's basically how you, well, you just get, or whatever you decide to collect, you can get the whole thing to send emails back out. And that's all with native functionality. There we go. So it's not just for Metasploit, it's actually a usable thing for other things as well. Routine. We have to be responsible hackers, I guess. If we must. Okay. So, is it possible to stop this? Well, yeah, kind of. So you can do close monitoring and event log. You can blacklist, stroke whitelist applications in Active Directory group policy. You can change firewall rules to stop access via whatever channels you decide to stop. There's always going to be 18, 443, we reckon, that kind of thing. And then you've got systems like Bitnan and Carbon Black. I've just included that one on the end of this week because they were like, oh, we've written a blog post about stopping this new Empire tool that's been released at BSides LV last week. So if you see that, that's the event log. So I guess like SIEM systems would see in the event log that PowerShell.exe was run. But that's all they see. They don't see what's actually being run inside the PowerShell session.
Yeah, so they wouldn't see this invoke PowerShell TCP or anything like that. They would just see purely PowerShell being run with an encoded script block, and that would be the reverse. Everything else is done, and none of that would be logged here.
So it's fairly simplistic, and actually that needs individual boxes to be modified with registry hacks to allow that to happen. To see the bottom part of it. You can actually see process command line, PowerShell, la 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 la. If that was encoded, obviously you didn't tell what it was there, but to make that happen, you need to hack the registry on each box to do that. And then we've got group policies. I said blacklist there, but blacklists obviously aren't the best way to do this. Whitelisting is probably the best option, but that's one way to stop it running, and that would stop the attack. If you can stop PowerShell.exe running, in our context, that is game over, isn't it? There's no ifs, buts, whys, maybes. It's the end of the game. But there are ways around that. And then we've obviously got setting the firewall up to stop any egress. And then again, Bitnan Carbon Black reckon on they can do this kind of thing as well, but they only detect PowerShell.exe being run. They again have got no defense against what's called DLL injection, reflective loading, which I don't know if anybody's seen or used Empire, which was released by Harmjoy and 6 other BSides LB, which is like Metasploit written for PowerShell. They've got what's called reflective DLL loading for an agent or a session, and there's no defense against that presently, is there?
No, so you don't even have to have PowerShell.exe on the box. If you block it, like we were saying before, you can run this DLL somehow. It runs PowerShell as it would normally.
Probably many people don't understand that the PowerShell.exe program is just a wrapper for .NET and all the APIs behind that. Windows is essentially an API-based operating system, and the PowerShell.exe just provides a front end that allows you to access all that behind it. So you can actually, there's even .NET classes set up so you can interact directly with it, and that's how the DLL injection part works. You interact with the back end effectively.
So yeah, essentially, if you haven't used PowerShell, I'm sure most of you have, get using it. It's pretty cool for jobs where you need to be more stealthy and not just go in there with a brick and a hammer. And we've written a blog about it, how to use the initial tools, so if you didn't get anything. I think the slides might be available as well later, so if you want to go for anything. But yeah.
Question? Oh, somebody at the back there.
Have you had a look at any RAM dumps left after this is being run to look for things like the email address that logs might be being sent away to or anything like that?
No, that would be an exchange though, wouldn't it? That would be
Because
on a separate box, wouldn't it? So you're effectively, the send email message is effectively using like the exchange server to send the email that the user's connected to for Outlook, for instance.
but a record of the commands would be left behind from PowerShell. So I know if you use something like volatility over a standard Windows random, you can pull out a list of the recently run commands from command.exe. So would that be similar to PowerShell, because the scripts that are being run, that it would essentially be live typing out the commands, I'm presuming, into RAM?
I assume if the host hasn't been rebooted and it's in RAM, then yeah, I would assume it would be the same in PowerShell.
Again, not to shoot myself in the foot here, because my background is more digital forensics.
Yeah.
So if this was to be entirely stealthy, it would be useful for it to go back through memory and perhaps sort of scrub things like that out of there, because as an incident responder, they're the sort of things that people are going to be looking for.
Sort of shut down the host before you leave.
Yeah.
Well, you can shut the box down from PowerShell anyway.
No, we don't do that on production systems.
No, it's not true.
Thank you.
But no, it's a really good point. I haven't really looked into that side of it at all, because that's not really my side of it, but it's worth looking at.
Because as you said, with verbose mode, you would get the output, etc. In RAM, all of those commands are being run there and can be seen in plain text most of the time. So even though, from a remote attacker's point of view, you're not going to see the script being put together and the line of command to email it back to yourself, you're just going to be seeing email this to me essentially, or whatever command you might be running. It would be really interesting to see how much of the actual script gets left behind in RAM.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure.
Job for you. Write a blog. Make sure you mention it. Anybody else?
You think that most antivirus won't pick up PowerShell-based attacks? Is there any that are good at it at the moment?
Not that I'm aware of.
I guess some might pick up. I think I've seen. I think ADG. If you send like a PDF in or something, and it's got PowerShell references, I think it picks up and it alerts on it. But actually stopping these attacks in memory once you've on the box with PowerShell, I don't think there's much that can do that yet.
We talked about mimikatz can be detected, but only as it's dropped on the box, because they detect the actual name of the file and some of the headers inside the PowerShell script. So if you change the name of the file and you take the headers away, it's happy days. And then, like I said, if you open the PowerShell command and then map a drive with new PS drive to your share on your pen test box with all your evil tools in it, it doesn't see it anyway. So you can run them happy as much as you like, and antivirus will not get interested in anything you do. It's completely immune at the moment. I think some are trying to make it so, but I don't think it's going to be. Unless they're hooking memory, but you imagine the overhead on hooking the memory in a PowerShell session, or the machine will just grind to a halt. So I don't think it's going to happen.
Anyone?
Anyone?
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.